Mazda is the brand quietly tinkering away, making vehicles that people don't buy because Toyota exists. Harsh, but true. And so Mazda decided to pivot. Their goal is not to be compared against mainstream brands like Honda or Toyota, but instead against premium and luxury rivals like Lexus or Audi. And this, the all-new 2023 CX-50, is their best effort yet. A few years ago, Mazda sold the compact CX-3 crossover, and it was fine. But there were a few areas of obvious improvement. So in 2020, they had another go at it and released the much more well-rounded CX-30 crossover. It was a much-needed rethink of the idea. This time, it's a bit more subtle, but in a similar vein, Mazda looked at its excellent but quite sedate-looking CX-5 SUV and thought to themselves, how should this really look? And presto, we got the new CX-50. CX-50 is 1.5 inches lower, 3 inches wider, and nearly 6 inches longer than the CX-5, with which it does share a decent amount of similar hardware. Basically, Mazda stretched this design out in all the right ways, and in my opinion, it's the best looking SUV they've ever designed, and it's actually up there as one of the better looking vehicles they've ever designed. Then there are details like the 20-inch wheels, which come on the higher trim levels of CX-50, along with this fantastic zircon sand metallic paint job that really do reinforce the stylish and sophisticated vibe that Mazda's going after with this new model. Considering the CX-50 is the same price as a CX-5, it comes across as the no-brainer choice and an obvious successor, though Mazda says they will sell the two vehicles alongside each other because they represent different demographics in the market, at least for now. With all the comparisons to CX-5, it's worth noting that CX-50 actually rolls on Mazda's next-generation platform that shares its underpinnings with vehicles like the current Mazda 3 and the smaller CX-30 crossover. That means this thing has an independent McPherson strut front suspension and a simple torsion beam at the rear. And while that can be a bit of a bummer in something smaller like the Mazda 3, which should be more nimble and agile, once you lift up the suspension and put on bigger tires like on CX-30 or even this larger CX-50, it does seem to just work a bit better. Also, the fact of the matter is, Mazda always gears their vehicles a bit more on the sporty side of things, with a bit of a firmer steering feel, firm brake pedal, and slightly firmer suspension. So make no doubts about it, this thing can certainly handle on a winding road like we're on now. Under the hood, there are currently 2 engine choices available, and anyone at all familiar with the Mazda lineup will know these 2 engines quite well because they basically power 90% of the brand's current model lineup. The standard engine is a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, good for 187 horsepower, which is fine, though the upgrade is this guy's, a 2.5-liter turbocharged engine that produces 256 horsepower and a massive 320 pound-feet of torque. No matter which way you go, you're getting a 6-speed automatic transmission and standard all-wheel drive. If you opt for the sportier turbo model, you can expect a 1 mpg drop over the basic engine down to 23 mpg city, 29 mpg on the freeway, and 26 mpg combined. To date, I've averaged a real-world figure of 21 miles to the gallon, though of course I do live in the urban hellscape that is Los Angeles, so take my real-world MPG numbers with a Botox-injected grain of salt. Of the two, of course the one you want is the turbocharged engine. It's smooth, refined, and potent, and really does feel understressed in its application, making it feel amply powerful, especially around town. Though depending on the trim level of CX-50 you choose from, there's about a $5,000 price premium with this more potent engine. Granted, Mazda bundles in other things with this sportier engine, but do keep that in mind. If you don't care about performance first and foremost, well, the basic engine's totally fine. Oh, hi there. It's your boy, just checking in. Are you enjoying the video so far? Well, of course you are. That's because this is some grade A primo content we're talking about. So go ahead and show your support by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. It's free and helps the channel. All right, back to the video. While Mazda is a brand that's always prided themselves on driving dynamics and the way their vehicles make you feel from behind the wheel, the modern Mazda way is also to offer an interior that feels a step above the conventional competition. And with CX-50, I believe they really have gone to the next level. Because for the longest time, it was actually the CX-5 that was my benchmark in the smaller SUV segment for fit, finish, and interior quality. It feels more appropriate to compare this interior to something you'd find in a Lexus or Audi product rather than a Honda or a Toyota. The varied use of colors, textures, and plush materials in here really does feel that next step up. I would be remiss, however, if I didn't point out a few hiccups with this CX-50. Take, for example, this center console, which actually opens up barn door style, which looks cool until you realize it actually requires two separate buttons to open up the halves of the console, and doing this with one hand and one motion is kind of a pain. That, admittedly, is a nitpick. I'm sure over time you learn to kind of do this more smoothly, even though in a week I really haven't. The real hang-up on this particular tester, which is, to be fair, an early build date example, is the fact that insulation appears to be coming out of the seams of the dashboard. I've reached out to Mazda to get a statement on this, but at the time of filming they had yet to answer my email, and that is certainly not a good look. Fortunately, our fully loaded Turbo Premium Plus trim level tester, yes I know, total mouthful there, is completely loaded with the sorts of comforts and conveniences you'd want for everyday driving. These power leather seats are both heated and ventilated. The second row is heated as well, as is this steering wheel. Also, we have a 10-inch infotainment display behind the camera that has standard wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto connectivity, along with a 12-speaker Bose audio system which bumps quite nicely. And in the typically obsessive Mazda fashion, this system, along with the acoustics of the interior, have been designed to minimize road and wind noise, making this cabin sound very nice and refined at higher speeds. My one real gripe with this interior is actually that infotainment setup I just mentioned, because it's tucked deep into the dash. Of course, it's not a touchscreen. It relies on these click wheels down here in the console. And while that interface by itself is fine, other brands do something similar, the actual display on the screen is a bit, well, overwrought. Things like changing the channel on the radio, for example, require multiple button presses through different submenus to do, and it's just too complicated. Basically, if you're going to use the Sirius XM or the public radio, set all your favorites, then you can use this main click wheel to toggle through those. Otherwise, it's a bit of an annoyance. Another nice perk is the inclusion of a wireless charging pad, which is of course reserved for this top trim level. Unfortunately, they've kind of tucked it under this center console, so it's very easy to forget your phone's actually in there. It really should be at this front space of the console here. There's a big gap. This seems like the obvious spot for a phone charger. Oh well. On the upside, I'm happy to report that at 6'1", I do fit very comfortably in the second row of CX-50, and with 31 cubic feet of storage in the trunk, it's pretty capacious back there as well. But all of this exposition is relative to the competition, of which I've pretty much driven all of them, because consumers like you can't stop buying compact and mid-size SUVs. Compared to conventional choices like the Honda CR-V, Toyota RAV4, Kia Sportage, or the Hyundai Tucson, this does feel a step above, especially in terms of interior refinement and with the availability of this potent turbocharged powertrain. That said, all four of those choices really do top out around 38 grand plus or minus a bit, while this does top out around 43 grand. That $5K price premium, as I mentioned, is bundled into this turbocharged engine. If you're okay with the base engine, which is directly comparable to what all four of those vehicles have, well, the price falls right in line with them. And you still get this excellent interior and driving experience, which makes this kind of a really, really strong option against those vehicles. Because Mazda is making this big push to go premium and upscale, I do want to mention two more expensive alternatives to keep in mind. First one up is the Audi Q5, and the reason why I bring it up is because it is so obvious looking at Mazda's brand strategy that Audi is the brand they're really benchmarking these days. Let's not beat around the bush, Audi's tech stack is way better than this thing. The MMI infotainment system is much nicer to look at and to use, and of course the virtual cockpit driver display is just way cooler than this system. Though to the Mazda's credit, there are some materials in here that do feel right up to par with what you can get in the Q5, so kudos to Mazda there. The hang-up with the Audi Q5 is, of course, that comparably equipped, there's a $17,000 price difference between the two, with that thing ringing in almost 60 grand, apples for apples. I don't know about you, but personally, I would rather pocket that extra 17 grand in cash. The other vehicle I want to mention is my current favorite in the luxury compact SUV segment, and that is the Lexus NX, which received a very thorough and much-needed redesign recently. Let's not beat around the bush, the interior of the Lexus does still feel better than this, though I'd say the gap is closer than you might think. On the flip side, I actually do prefer the Mazda's powertrain, which is feel that bit sportier. Similar to the Audi, there is a price premium with the Lexus. Comparably equipped, it's about 50 grand, which is still about a 7 grand price bump over the Mazda. Whether or not it's worth it will be up to you. It's worth noting that all the vehicles I just mentioned do offer some form of hybrid or plug-in hybrid alternative, which, unless you're dead set on this turbocharged experience, would be, in my opinion, the way to go. Curiously, the CX-50 is built in the Mazda-Toyota Manufacturing USA plant, a joint effort between the two based out of Huntsville, Alabama. Yes, this Mazda's made in the USA. That's not much of a surprise, because manufacturing an automobile, regardless of the brand, is a truly international endeavor these days. What's interesting is that it is the same plant where the Toyota Corolla Cross is built. Though, don't get it twisted, the two really don't share anything in common besides that. Anywho, did you know that of the 332,756 vehicles Mazda sold in North America last year, almost 85% were SUVs or crossovers? The majority of those sales came from the excellent CX-5, so it makes complete sense that Mazda would take an evolutionary swing at that with this new CX-50. And it does represent this sort of wellspring of new ideas that may inform the way that forthcoming new models like the larger CX-60 and CX-70 SUVs may end up being. All of this brings me to the fact that Mazda's announced that in the very near future, we can expect a hybridized version of the CX-50 to be available as well, and that the powertrain will be sourced from Toyota. If we could get the RAV4 Hybrid's 40 MPG powertrain in this same luxurious and sporty Mazda experience, that just might be the killer app that Mazda needs to continue growing their momentum in the United States. But hey, that's just one guy's thoughts. I'm curious what you guys think about the new Mazda CX-50 and forthcoming developments between Mazda and Toyota. As it stands, the CX-50 is an excellent premium SUV from the brand and a truly great alternative against conventional luxury rivals. So I think that's all I got for this one, guys. In any case, my name is Jake. You've been watching Drive, Brake, Fix, Repeat, and I'll see you guys next time or go do more cool things with cars. Bye.